Shalom, everybody. My name is Barry Siegel, and this is a VFI News Emergency Update. Well, as you probably know, the war we've been dreading, anticipating, and hoping that wouldn't be necessary, and also preparing for most of the last 20 years, has started. In what the IDF called Operation Rising Lion, airstrikes to destroy Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, assassinate nuclear scientists, and other key leaders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian military began around 3 a.m. this morning. Around that time, the air raid sirens sounded all throughout Israel, sending all of us to get ready to prepare and go down to our shelters wherever we could turn to. It turns out that this was done as a precaution since there was an anticipation that Iran would retaliate immediately. But for several hours, they did not until we got word later this morning, that they had launched around 120 long-range drones against us. Now, these are slow-moving, taking almost 2 hours to get here, and the Israeli Air Force, as well as the Jordanian Air Force, were up there trying to shoot as many of these drones down as possible before they got close enough to cause any problems here in Israel. It could be that some got through, but to the best of my knowledge, as of now, none of them got through, which is amazing. And so anyhow, just keep praying for us and pray for our air defense systems. So just in case, if I have to cut this video short and run to a shelter, don't be surprised. I'll let you know. Now, a quick comment here. Israel has watched the negotiations between Iran and the United States over the nuclear issue going nowhere very slowly for the past several weeks. It was obvious that Iran was stalling for time as they raced to the bomb. On Thursday, the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency issued a decision that Iran was in breach of its obligations under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and that ripped away the last shred of ambiguity about what's going on and what needed to happen next. Continuing on, several world governments condemned Iran following the IAEA announcement, but nevertheless, the Trump administration in the United States announced that it was going to send Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to Oman on Sunday for one more round of negotiations. By the way, remember President Donald Trump gave Iran 60 days notice to respond positively? Today is the 61st day, if you didn't know that. But even that was considered just for show, Witkoff going to Oman, as there were many indications that the administration had already come to the conclusion that Israeli airstrikes were all but inevitable, and U.S. involvement, at least in defending Israel from retaliation and possibly joining in offensive actions, were very likely. Iran had also done something stupid, issued a very foolish threat to attack U.S. bases and personnel in the Middle East, as well as possibly the oil fields in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, if the negotiations were to break down. U.S. officials strongly pushed back against those threats, but they also began withdrawing family members and non-essential personnel from regional embassies and bases. U.S. facilities in Eastern Europe and other parts of North Africa were also put on alert to be ready for possible problems. All of this and more led Israel to believe that an outbreak of hostilities with Iran was inevitable. And so the political leadership decided that if it was going to happen, it was best to get in the first punch, and a big one at that, and it's still ongoing. Anyone who has ever been in any kind of violent confrontation knows that this is the best policy. It's what Israel did at the beginning of the Six-Day War in June 1967, and I'm sure someday books will be written comparing these two wars together. But for now, we're not writing history books. We're still in the middle of living through it, so let's get caught up on what we know so far and its main points. Israel has launched at least 5 waves of airstrikes and taken out several of the most dangerous leaders in the Iranian regime, including Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Major General Hossein Salami. This man was one of the regime's most capable leaders, but he's not the only one they lost this morning. Also, Iranian Armed Forces Chief of Staff Major General Mohammad Bagheri and IRGC Senior Commander Gholam Ali Rashid, as well as advisors to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, and several top nuclear scientists and engineers were also taken out by airstrikes in the early morning hours. Of course, the strikes also hit Iran's air defense system, so that follow-on waves of strikes would be less vulnerable, and ballistic missile batteries and other strategic assets were also hit. Israel's Mossad intelligence agency reportedly had large numbers of small drones in place near Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure, meant to hit those places hard at the very beginning of the attack in order to reduce the risk to Israel's home front. In other words, Mossad was in and around Tehran already planning the attack we had. This is amazing, just like what happened to Hezbollah in Lebanon. But the main target of the strike was the Natanz nuclear facility. This is where much of the enrichment work has been done, and that needed to be shut down. There is a lot more infrastructure that supports Iran's nuclear weapons program, and it will all have to be hit sooner or later. The IDF said in the run-up to this attack that it would probably need at least a week to destroy this program, and that's if it's even possible without U.S. support and these huge mega bunker buster bombs. On that note, the U.S. will have a hard time staying out of this fight, even though that's obviously what the Trump administration would like to do. Some of Israel's other traditional allies, like the UK, have already said they won't join in defending us against the counterattacks as they did in the past. I'm actually sorry to hear that, but I'm not worried about it. I'm sure the God of Israel can keep this country safe from Iran's counterattacks without help from the Royal Air Force, as we witnessed last April 13th and 14th in 2024, as well as October 1st of 2024. I do want to say, Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania, thank you for standing with Israel as you're encouraging us to continue this operation, or now this war against Iran. But people, the big question is, will Iran be foolish enough to follow through on a threat to attack U.S. forces in the region and thus provoke an American response? Another big question is whether Iran's people will take this moment to rise up against their corrupt and tyrannical regime. I already hear that there are people rejoicing in the streets of Iran against their dictatorship. If they don't, they'll be missing an opportunity that might not come again for a very long time, if ever. Well, that's all for now, folks. Please be in urgent prayer about this situation. Even as we're filming this report, we've been told to be ready to run to bomb shelters at a moment's notice, and we might have to stay down there for several hours, if not longer. Until next time, friends, this has been an emergency update by Barry Siegel from VFI News. God bless you and shalom.